Hi there, everybody. Good morning. I did not make theme music for this delightful event. I don't know what's going on here. Whoops. Okay, sorry about that. Welcome to the MK Ultra hearing. We're about 15 minutes out, and I've got the task force hearing streaming video ready to go as soon as it comes online. I've spoken with my colleague who is going to be a witness for the Democrats. That is going to be Dr. Elizabeth Janexi, who is a former NIH program official, senior program official. She worked at NIH for 22 years, managing a very large research portfolio of many different kinds of grants, as well as authoring different types of funding programs. So at NIH back in the day, this is going out of style now, but the individual institutes and centers that make up the NIH would have their program officials get together and identify knowledge gaps that were important to fill, important scientific questions that needed to be answered, and they would author funding opportunities to get grants to fill in some of those knowledge gaps. So that's what what Liz did for 22 years at NIH, and did a lot of really, really impactful research. Liz and I have had conversations about some of the projects that she had been working on when this whole nightmare started, and she ended up leaving NIH. And it really breaks my heart as a scientist to think about all of the research that we've lost because of talented people at NIH like Liz. But thank goodness for her expertise, because she's now available, now that she's no longer at NIH, to still come and provide congressional testimony about her expertise. And wow, what does a senior NIH program official have to do with mind control and MK Ultra? Okay, now it looks like the streaming window has gone live. So I'm just going to pull that up very briefly. Here we go. Very exciting. Let me put it on screen here. Sorry, I have a new monitor set up. And I have a new desk. So I'm still trying to kind of make everything work. Anyways, so Liz is going to be talking about, I think, human subjects protection, because that's what this MK Ultra stuff is all about. So I thought before the hearing started, I'd pop in here and just chat with everybody a little bit about what MK Ultra even is. What is this mind control that the CIA was getting up to? And why is Anna Paulina Luna, who is the head of this task force on the House Oversight Committee, what is her role in all of this? So Anna Paulina Luna is a very hardcore MAGA-aligned Republican congresswoman from Florida, who is a former model, and she was in the Air Force. And so she's taken a lot of like these, pictures of her like looking hot in tactical gear. But now she's a congressperson, and she's relatively unhinged. She hangs around with the likes of Lauren Boebert, who will be also at this hearing today, I believe. And they are going to be talking to a variety of experts on the MK Ultra program. So this was a mind control program. But it wasn't really mind control. I mean, the CIA was experimenting with ways to do mind control, but we don't really know how successful they were, and probably not very. Mostly it was drugging people. So back in the early 1950s, the Cold War was at its height, and we were just doing everything we could in the US to make sure we got one up on the Soviet Union. And we were worried, or I guess the guys at the CIA were worried, that the Soviet Union was getting ahead of us in terms of their mind control and interrogation tactics. So they started something called Project Bluebird, and then they had something called Project Artichoke that was like in 1951, I think. And Project Artichoke was a way to sort of trick an adversary into, or an enemy into thinking that they were going into a medical clinic and getting some kind of medical treatment when actually they'd be getting some kind of drugs. So they got all kinds of different drugs on people that they tested, and then this became MK Ultra. So they didn't. It doesn't seem like they actually spent a lot of time trying to trick people into this sort of fake medical situation. The guy who ran MK Ultra was this guy named Sidney Gottlieb, and he sounds like he was a pretty terrible guy. Given that MK Ultra did do a bunch of experiments on people who didn't realize they were being experimented on. So that's a big no-no in terms of research ethics. You don't want to ever do that. And in this case, they were doing it on people who were in psychiatric hospitals, people who'd been involuntarily committed, and they were doing it on prisoners. So that's also big no-no, like not supposed to do that with human research participants or human subjects, as they were called back in the day. So that was obviously bad, but mostly it was drugging people. They experimented with like hypnosis and electroshock stuff, and all these different techniques that really comes down to they were drugging people and trying to get people into like an altered mental state so that they could interrogate them better. It's important to note that Project Artichoke and MK Ultra that were doing this were not trying to do this to American citizens. They were trying to do this to like foreign enemies. So this was for to trick Soviet people into confessing like all of the communist secrets or whatever. So that was the point of MK Ultra. Now, in 1973, the program was closed, and it was obviously, not something good that they did, because all of this, unethical, without consent, human subjects experimentation was not something that, the CIA director wanted to see the light of day. So on his way out of office, Richard Helms, who was the CIA director at the time, ordered that all of the primary research records for MK Ultra be destroyed. And so they were incinerated. Many of the documents that exist now are financial records or administrative records. They don't really have anything to do with the actual research that was done in MK Ultra. So we, to a degree, will never know what happened in MK Ultra unless some sort of secret trove of documents is uncovered. But from what I can tell, there is no such secret trove of documents, because it was well understood that Richard Helms destroyed and literally burned into ashes all of the records of MK Ultra. So there probably won't be very much accountability, but that's not actually the point of this hearing. So Anna Paulina Luna loves these types of conspiracy theories, because ultimately what they do is they point a finger back at the government and say, look at how bad the old democratic way of doing things was. Don't you like things better now that we live in essentially an autocracy? And that's the point of this hearing. It's not to really get accountability for unethical human experimentation that was being done as part of the MK Ultra project, but it's something that's going to be used to further the dismantling of the government. And in this case, they're essentially using this to do to the intelligence community what they are doing elsewhere in the government to science and public health, for example. And that's where I come in. So I do not think about MK Ultra. Like, this is not something that's very interesting to me. Whatever, it's old Cold War stuff. Like, I'm just not that interested in it. It doesn't have anything to do with viruses. So, not really my thing. Well, it turns out that it does have to do with viruses, because guess what? Anna Paulina Luna's source for all of this information that she has uncovered with her investigation is Tulsi Gabbard, who is a known Russian asset. Now, Anna Paulina Luna herself is awfully friendly with a lot of people who are involved in the Russian government and who are friends with Vladimir Putin. So Anna Paulina Luna's activities include things like opposing any support and aid to Ukraine, essentially taking pro-Russian positions on most things, and certainly helping Tulsi Gabbard spread her Russian propaganda about biolabs in the Ukraine and things of that nature. So that is why Anna Paulina Luna is having this hearing. It's to just get some of these ideas more out into the mainstream. And this is why I'm involved, because they are going to make it about vaccines, guys. This is 5G microchips kind of stuff that we're talking about here. And that's where I come in. So just because there was this one line in like a Project Artichoke document about trying to trick somebody into taking drugs for interrogation by giving them a fake vaccine, this idea was dismissed by Sidney Gottlieb because he thought that MK Ultra should be more covert and should not try to trick people into thinking that they were going to get medical care. It should just be able, you should just be able to mind control people. Again, I don't think he was very successful, but it was mainly looking for ways to drug people. Anyways, because of this like one reference, like, hey, maybe we could fake vaccines to do it. It's now become, a popular thing with the anti-vaxxers. And just to go to show that the Venn diagram of all of these crazy people is becoming a perfect circle, there's a bunch of lab leak stuff involved in this stuff too. Tulsi Gabbard, in addition to releasing this JFK and MK Ultra information, which was supposedly taken out of her office by the CIA. Her office was raided by the CIA, and all these like secret documents were removed. And then Anna Paulina Luna like got them back, and it's so much dumb drama. These documents don't say anything, but like that's what this is all about. Ultimately, it comes down to Fauci did the pandemic. So let's get the NIH, let's get our national security apparatus, let's get our intelligence program, let's get the whole US government. And that's why I am here today to talk to you, because, oh God, it's the same stuff. It's anti-vax, it's lab leak. I already know about all this stuff, so might as well learn. Oops, sorry about that. Might as well learn about MK Ultra. There's just not that much to learn. It was mostly a bunch of CIA people, who read too much science fiction and decided that they were going to start trying to do some of those things themselves, and probably were not very successful for the most part, but did a lot of unethical things in the process. So let's talk about who some of these other witnesses are. The Republicans have brought two witnesses, and one of them is a historian. So no idea really what he's going to talk about. I'm new to this area. The other guy, Tom O'Neill, is a journalist who has written a book called Chaos about how Charles Manson was a CIA asset and MK Ultra was like Manchurian candidating him or something. So these people are like sort of certified tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists. And really, it all comes back to the same thing. It all comes back to, here's a convenient conspiracy. That's kind of an exciting story that, who doesn't want to hear about, oh my God, the government was like doing all this shady stuff to do mind control. I bet it was the Democrats who did it. I bet it was Joe Biden. He was somehow involved. It comes back to this every single time. The old way of doing things, AKA American democracy, is not a good way of doing things anymore. And we need to move to this more dictatorial format of government, which I personally disagree with strongly. I really, really am upset by the fact that this whole thing, the collapse of American democracy, the death of my country, the subversion of normal processes. I mean, we are literally having a congressional hearing that's funded by our tax dollars about insane conspiracy theories. I'm really resentful that these people are being such clowns about it. I mean, the thing is, all of this stuff is going to be a complete and total circus today. It's going to be a clown show. Liz has already reported that there are some interesting people waiting to get into the hearing. That's for sure. I expect there to be a lively audience, and probably there's going to be some dramatic moments today in this hearing. So I'm glad that we're watching along. But it does make me really sad, because at the end of the day, we can laugh at this stuff and how stupid it is. And it's going to be so, so, so unbelievably stupid. It's going to be so stupid. But, at the end of the day, that stupidity is what's going to be the end of America as we know it. And I think it's really important for people to understand that their tax dollars are paying for this. This is what our elected leaders are doing. And especially since there is a midterm election coming up in a few months, I really think that Americans need to see how their elected officials are representing them, how they are meeting this moment in our country's history, in our country, a moment of tremendous crisis for our country. And they're meeting it by having congressional oversight hearings about mind control and giving people LSD and experimenting on people. I mean, which is bad, obviously not pro you know unconsented human experimentation, but also, like, what does this have to do with anything? There's no secret that we can uncover. All the people who were involved in Project MK Ultra are dead. They are not currently part of the dark web or whatever that's running the government, part of the shadow state, the deep state. Sorry, I can't remember like what the deep state actually is. Sometimes it's the US government. I mean, really, in this case, the deep state seems to me like it is the Russian government more than anything else. And it's actually just the state in the US these days. I mean, the fascists are pretty open about it. And Anna Paulina Luna is one of those people. Lauren Boebert is also on this. Now, she tweeted back in, I think, April that, Anna Paulina Luna was like, we're going to have an MK Ultra hearing. And Lauren Boebert was like, I've been waiting my whole time in Congress for this. So, I mean, this is just crazy to think that the people of Lauren Boebert's district in Colorado, who she's representing, elected somebody who has been waiting her entire congressional career for the opportunity to put on like a show hearing where you're going to basically codify this MK Ultra conspiracy theory bullshit. And that's really what it is. And when you think about it, it's actually pretty Orwellian, because the strategy here is just to repeat these ridiculous conspiracy theories over and over and over again until they become true for most people. That's what happened with the lab leak. So again, I say, as somebody who has co-authored multiple papers of original research showing that there was no lab leak, or at least that the evidence that we have is inconsistent with a lab leak. And we have a lot of evidence. The pandemic did not start because of a lab leak, and it did not start because of Tony Fauci starting a lab leak or funding research in China. It did not start because of virology research. It did not start because of dangerous gain of function research. But what do I see every time I open X or Twitter? I see Rand Paul and a zillion other Republicans all saying that it is a known fact that it is a lab leak. It is absolutely determined. There is no room for argument. The debate is over. It was a lab leak. And they just say this over and over again. And the average person, I get it, is not interested in that. Looks like we're getting started. I'm going to shut up now. Yeah, and it was in 1973. So in other words, those documents are meaningless. Super organized. Oh, these dudes look exactly like I thought they were going to. All right. Not sure if this guy's crazy or not. He's an academic. Could mean he's crazy. Not that secret, evidently. Right, because most of it got burned. I don't think anybody's disputing that that's bad. Sherlock Holmes in it, huh? Yeah, so they drugged him with LSD and threw him out a window. Is how the story goes. Sure, but here we go. I would agree with that. Okay, I think I fixed everything. So sorry about all those technical issues. What you just missed was him basically talking about how Charles Manson was a CIA asset. And there's Liz. She's great. Comment. It's going to be the first largest on record. What a wow. I thought nobody was getting gavelled out. Here we go. It's mind controlled bioweapons. If there was such a decision, I don't think it's known that he was murdered. Here we go. And they invented Lyme disease. There were a lot of Nazi scientists who came over in Operation Paperclip. Right. Okay, guys, I don't know what's going on with my sound. I'm gonna try to figure this out right now. Um, you know that I'm just closing the stream and I'm gonna just restart it. Last time I did this, I there was an echo. So I wore my AirPods this time, and I'm a little worried that perhaps that is causing the issue. So I'm gonna take them out, and we'll just have to live with an echo if there's going to be one. So let me fix this, and bear with me, friends. Thank you for your patience. I swear to God, I'm actually really good with technology for some things. I'm not particularly good with these things. The other issue is to be able to share the system audio, and so that's what I'm doing right now. Oh my god, I'm so sorry that everybody's missing this because this is so incredibly fucking dumb. I'm gonna get this fixed before Lauren Boebert comes on. He's talking about a poisoning MK Ultra experiment in France that involved poisoned bread. Oh, this is so annoying. I don't know why it's not working. Sorry, guys. So irritating. Oh my god. This is so dumb. You guys, I'm fixing this right now. Like, I have to be able to share it this. This is so profoundly fucking stupid. Let me get this guy back up here. Let's just try it in a tab. Mind control and accountability. You guys, this is I'm just truly so astonished at how stupid this thing is. And I can't believe that we're missing it. Okay. I've almost got it back. I'm just completely reopening everything. And we're going to open this up on YouTube. And then I'm going to move it back here. And we're going to try this again. Well, I'm not back online yet. Oh, yes, I am. Whoops. Hi, hi, everybody. Sorry about this. Oh boy, this is so annoying. Okay.
Do
Okay,
you do you
I hope that you
do
can
you
hear me
see
now.
now what I'm talking about
What
when
just
you say that
happened
the
is
NIH
he
doesn't have
accused Liz Genexi
integrity
of
problems and trust issues? Did you
participating
hear the
with
applause
Tony
in this
Fauci
room?
in covering
That should tell you right now that you're pretty tone deaf to what the public thinks about how the NIH handled COVID and the cover up, not only the funding of it, but the cover up involved in the aftermath.
This is
Can you
bullshit.
acknowledge that?
It's a lie.
I'm sorry, that's not my understanding.
That's right, Liz.
Who's,
No, he doesn't like people clapping for her.
thank you. I want to acknowledge Ms. Bobert for the next round of questioning.
Oh, for God's sake. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Well,
and
hopefully the
thank you
sound's back on
to
because
two of our
here we go.
witnesses who are here to actually talk on our subject here today. Mr. Kinzer, in your book, Poisoner in Chief, you describe how Project MKUltra was authorized by CIA Director Alan Dulles in April of 1953
All right.
as an umbrella program for research into the covert use of biological and chemical materials for mind control and interrogation. What specific geopolitical and intelligence concerns, particularly regarding alleged Soviet and Chinese, quote, brainwashing and Korean War prisoners, drove this authorization? And how did Cindy Gottlieb's unique background and personality and worldwide view shape the program's direction and methods and
Unique
ethical
background and
boundaries?
personality. That's because Sidney Gottlieb is Jewish.
Let me start by answering your second question about Gottlieb. He was a very different person from all of the other senior CIA officers of that era. Most of them came from silver spoon backgrounds. They went to the same prep schools and the same Ivy League colleges and belonged to the same yacht clubs and worked for the same law firms and international banks. Sidney Gottlieb was the son of Orthodox Jewish refugees from Central Europe. He had a limp. He had a stutter. He went to Hebrew school. He was so different from all of the other officers. And upon reflection, I think this may not have been an accident. I think that people at the CIA understood that whoever had this job was going to be doing some awful, terrible things that would be very bloody, that they might become known, and it might be necessary to blame it all on somebody. And they didn't want to have to blame it all on one of their own. So Gottlieb actually became the person on whom everything was blamed. In fact, when he testified in secret here in Congress in the 1970s, he complained that there were documents on which various signatures had been redacted, but his alone had remained. So is a way of diverting attention away from the institutional responsibility of the CIA and trying to blame it on one crazy person. As for the international situation at the time, I think it's very important to understand this because there is a sort of a parallel to today. The CIA misinterpreted several key incidents in the world, including those to which you referred, the trial of the Cardinal Mindszenty, and then in Hungary, and then the return of Korean War prisoners. Neither of those episodes really had to do with mind control, but in the CIA, they were interpreted that way. And this gave the CIA a reason to pretend that its research was purely defensive. So I think when you consider the world situation and the sense in Washington that we're surrounded by enemies, that becomes a very dangerous environment.
Yeah, so
conspiracy theories stem from the growth of the covert sphere. There's a great contradiction in American life that we pretend to uphold certain principles at home and abroad, but it's evident to many Americans that we actually operate in opposition to those principles. and we operate by secret and anti-democratic means. That contributes to suspicion of government. And the very existence of MK Ultra proves that some of the wildest fantasies about secret government research are actually close to reality. That makes the paranoid mindset seem ever more rational.
Thank you. And I'm going to have to cut off several of my questions now, but that was very intriguing. So I wanted you to continue. MK Ultra ultimately encompassed at least 149 sub-projects and involving more than 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies, often funded through cutout foundations to conceal CIA sponsorship. Can you detail how these funding and operational security mechanisms worked in practice? And then just another subset, if I don't get back to asking a question, did the CIA or government or any of these entities ever say that what they were doing with MK Ultra and mind control were productive or for the betterment of humanity? Did they ever make those claims? Thank you.
As for your second question, I'm not aware, other than in private communications, that the CIA ever claimed that it had made great advances under MK Ultra, because it largely denied that MK Ultra ever existed. As for the foundations, yeah, these are, Sidney Gottlieb created a couple of bogus foundations. They're called cutouts in CIA slang. And these are foundations that appear to be independent, but actually are fully funded and controlled by the CIA. It was those foundations that approached hospitals and clinics and asked them to become involved in research, particularly into LSD. So many of the institutions where these experiments took place did not even realize that those foundations were actually covers for the CIA.
Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, I yield.
So like,
Thank you. I now recognize Representative Mace from South Carolina.
The CIA was like,
Thank you so much.
covertly
Dr.
covering up they were
Janexi,
CIA
you work with the
assets too.
NIH, correct?
No, I am no longer affiliated with the NIH.
When did you leave the NIH?
April of last year.
April of last year. Did you ever speak with Anthony Fauci or any of your NIH colleagues when
Oh,
you
God.
were there about the NIH's
Another great
role in funding the
scientific
Wuhan
mind. I
Institute
forgot
of
that she was gonna
Virology
be
or
there.
the development of COVID-19 virus?
No,
Do you believe that the
called
NIH
SARS
or Dr. Fauci
coronavirus,
lied to the
not
American people about
COVID-19
COVID?
virus, but what
No.
else?
Are you familiar with Dr. Fauci's statements to Congress about COVID?
no,
You didn't watch any of Dr. Fauci. You worked at the NIH and you didn't watch any of
I
Dr.
love how they
Fauci's.
think
I
that
did
people
not
at
work at
NIH like we're
NIAID.
just sitting around all day
Okay.
watching Tony Fauci.
Do you think
Yeah.
that,
Like watching Tony
do you think the
Fauci press
COVID shots harm
conferences.
American citizens?
no, I do not.
Do you think that the COVID shots cause turbo cancers?
No,
Have you read any, do you know if the NIH or NIAID track COVID shot injuries or
That's not their
cancers or
job.
anything
The
harmful from
CDC
them?
and the FDA do
I
that,
am
Nancy.
not aware of any harmful tracking, and this is not my area of expertise, no.
What is your area of expertise?
I'm a research psychologist, and I did not work at NIAID.
And you're here for what reason?
I am here to testify about what is happening to the NIH right now.
You're doing great, Liz. Don't let her throw you
You're not
off.
here to testify
idiot.
about MK Ultra?
I am not an MK Ultra expert,
Why did the Dems send you here if you're not an MK Ultra expert?
but I am an expert in human subjects protection, which is related, and in the conduct of human subjects
She's an expert in the ways that the government is being dismantled, and that's why the Democrats asked
But you
her.
don't know anything about MK Ultra, which is the purpose of
And I'm
this
grateful for
hearing.
her being here.
All right, so I have a couple questions for our witnesses who are here to talk about MK Ultra, and thank you, gentlemen, Dr. Kinzer and Mr. O'Neill.
This woman
What are
thinks
some of
that
the worst
transgenic
abuses
mice
that
are
you're aware of in the
transgender.
MK Ultra program?
She's very, very, very fucking stupid.
I can start by just naming, I'll talk about one in particular that always sticks in my mind. In the federal prison in Lexington, Kentucky, a group of African-American inmates was segregated and fed what were described in the protocol as double, triple, and quadruple doses of LSD every day for 77 days.
Did they all survive?
We have no idea what
Okay.
happened to them. This has stuck with me ever since I wrote that book. What happened to them? Did they ever find out what was given to them? Did they think they were going crazy? Did they? I think if the
Do you think we're still experimenting on prisoners or people in prison today?
Yes, we're giving them gender affirming care.
I don't have any information about that.
Okay.
I'm hoping there'll be another book about what's
Mr. O'Neill?
happening now.
What are some of the worst abuses in MK Ultra?
There were many. The Frank Olson case, which was referenced earlier, that was a murder. I don't believe that was a suicide. And
Yeah,
the
well-
motivation was because he was going to be a whistleblower. He worked at the CIA, he worked in the development of biological weapons, and he was planning to go public
Okay, so-
and announced that the United States government was using biological weapons in the Korean War. And also, he was going to share what he knew about
Which
MK Ultra
biological
experiments,
weapons?
including lethal experiments. And there's a documented case.
How many, gentlemen, how many people do you
Illegal
think died
experiment.
through the MK Ultra program or were murdered?
No idea.
If those who died largely were outside the United States, many people were experimented to death in that safe house in Germany that I visited. And people in the neighborhood told me they knew what was going on in that house, and that people who were experimented to death are now buried in what used to be forest plots that are now covered
Do
over
you think
with
the German
apartments.
government knew what the US government was doing? Do you think there was a partnership there or knowledge?
Yes, there is a memo that was
Hmm.
written by the German Secret Service to Konrad
Well, if that's
Adenauer,
the
the
case, why
Chancellor
don't
of
you
Germany,
dig up
telling
those
him
dead prisoners
American citizens are
produce some evidence
Americans
of
are
this?
here capturing citizens, capturing people and conducting extreme experiments which are in violation of German law. And Adenauer decided to put that aside and not to
I
investigate.
have one more
further.
question. 'Cause
See,
I have
here's the
15
problem. I'm
seconds.
not sure that
Is this a
there's any
massive
evidence of
cover-up
that.
by the US government?
It's certainly a cover-up of what happened in the past.
Mr. O'Neill?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
He
and I yield
really
back.
is trying so hard.
Thank
to
you,
get
Representative
them to
Mace. I
say
now recognize
that the
Mr.
current
Perry from
government is
Pennsylvania
doing
for
this.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. To Dr. Kinzer and Mr. O'Neill, I want to focus on the information that we do have and things of that nature. Do we know of,
I
can you
mean,
name the locations, say the prisons, the hospitals, other institutions, and the cutouts as you described, either one of you folks described them, that would be familiar to us or the American people? Can you
Right.
name these?
Yeah, if I could begin just by saying, at the end of the 1977 hearings, Senator Ted Kennedy and Senator Daniel Inouye, who were the co-chairs, demanded that there be an investigation to find out who were the perpetrators, where were the experiments conducted, and most importantly, to locate victims, compensate them, notify them, because many didn't even know they'd been experimented on, and give them lifetime medical care. President Jimmy Carter and Attorney General Griffin Bell said the federal government will begin an investigation. That never happened. Instead, the CIA created something called the Victims Task Force to investigate itself. It was a two-man investigation to locate victims, and they only looked for people who had been experimented on in the safe houses. They completely, because I interviewed both of them before they passed away, they completely avoided institutional experimental programs
I
at
mean,
the
all of this stuff
hospitals.
is absolutely
You're asking about the hospitals, the Oklahoma City Hospital, Lackland Air Force Base Hospital, Lexington Addiction Center, which Dr. Kinzer referred to, the Holmesburg Prison, Vacaville Prison, universities all over the country, Yale, Ivy League universities. None of those records there was a criminal investigation was also supposed to start into Gottlieb's destruction of the records. That had been announced by the Justice Department. And I interviewed Griffin Bell and asked him what happened to all those investigations and what happened to all those efforts to locate victims. He said it just must have fallen through the cracks.
No,
So it was the DOJ that was
Correct. I
supposed to
think that they
investigate.
DOJ, the
have
Department of
evidence to charge him
Justice,
with
and they
anything.
just kept passing it off and passing it off.
You know if the DOJ and their investigation visited the places that you've named?
No, absolutely not. From
Wait, hold on a second. They didn't, or you don't know?
Oh, no. I asked the two men who did the investigation,
Well, I
and
don't
they said
think those
all we
men
did
are
was look into
representative
what
of the
happened at the
entire
safe houses
Department of
in
Justice,
San
especially
Francisco
now.
and New York City in
Why don't you go ask Todd
1962.
Blanchard?
So is it possible that information and documentation remains at the prisons, the treatment centers, the universities where these things were conducted? Is that possible?
Yeah, well, I found Dr. West's records
I
at
didn't think so.
UCLA in his file. Hospital records are really hard to get because of HIPAA laws, and prison records, the Bureau of Prisons do
Right.
have a lot. So yeah, it is possible there's still documents buried places.
What were
Why
the
haven't you
age?
been looking, bud?
What were the average ages, if you know, of the people that were experimented on? Were these children? Were these middle-aged? Were they?
Well, there
younger?
were adolescent
prisoners
studies
there were that
done
were being
in
experimented on.
juvenile detention facilities and jails with kids who were 16, 17, 18 years old, and at institutional schools for wayward kids. The National Training School for Boys here in Washington, D.C. had them. So it ranged from, I think, adolescent, pre-adolescent, through any age.
If you could describe, either one of you, the number of potential victims, if you could hazard a guess. Is this
There were
hundreds?
149 programs that we know of that were subcontracted outside of.
149 separate programs.
So yeah, outside, and that's
Yeah, I mean,
what we
this
know of.
program
Again,
could go
everything
on
we
for
know of
20
is
years. Like,
minuscule
it literally,
compared to what was
MK
really
Ultra
going
lasted
on.
from
So I mean,
1970
that could have
sorry,
been into the
1953
tens of thousands, and I believe that's another reason
So it was
that nothing
literally
was
20
pursued,
years worth
because
of
if those
stuff.
people were compensated, it could have bankrupted.
Has there been any
They could have
recent
bankrupted the
attempts to
US? What are you
find,
talking about?
locate, identify victims of this?
Not that
thing?
I know of.
I would just add that there's been considerable progress in this regard in Canada. There was MK Ultra research going on at a psychiatric hospital in Canada, and the Canadian government has made a real effort to try to find out who the victims were, and also to compensate them and to provide them with medical treatment. So if we're looking for an example of a place where it was done better, even though it was on a much smaller scale, Canada would be a place to look.
So other than embarrassment
I
to the
don't
federal
think
government,
the
maybe
CIA is gonna
agencies
go with the
involved, and
Canadian way of
particular
managing
individuals who are
truth and
probably likely
reconciliation
deceased at
for
this
MK
point, what is
Ultra.
the
But nice
what
thought.
is the reason for the mass redaction of the information that we do have? Has any reasoning been given?
Shame?
I'm sorry?
Shame?
That's what I'm saying, other than embarrassment, but I think it stands to reason that probably the individuals involved in conducting and authorizing this activity are probably all deceased.
Sure.
That's
at this
correct.
point. Is there any reason to believe otherwise?
I make those arguments in my FOIA requests, but it doesn't get me anywhere. I don't know about you, Dr. Kinzer.
All right, my time's expired. I'll give him.
Thank you,
About your
Representative
time
Perry. I'm now
expired.
going to go to
I was
second
really
line of questions.
hoping
I'll
that
be recognizing
continue
myself
along that
followed by, I
track.
believe, Representative Bober and either of the representatives if they'd like to join in. I wanted to
Why?
elaborate further, Dr.
Guys,
Kinzer, on what you had stated
coming up
about
with this
potentially there
stuff
being
that they
bodies,
assume.
locations, Germany,
They
because I'm
talk
going to reach
about
out
it
to the
like
German
it's
government
true.
after this to get the ball rolling on that, if that
And it's just
is
they
indeed
wrote in
the
their book.
case. Can you just elaborate further on what you were hearing from people in that area, what they were saying, and then also to potential locations of bodies?
First of all, the memo that Chancellor Adenauer received is on the record. You can find that memo warning that these operations are going on.
Okay.
I did speak to people who lived in that area, and they all understood. Some of them had cooperated with an investigation by a German magazine, Der Spiegel, that called that house the CIA torture center. And in that article, it said there were deaths, but the number is not known. So it was a secret to us. But what we were doing in that house was really not even a secret to the people in the neighborhood. It
So, I
reminds
mean,
me of the
You're telling
bombing
me
of Cambodia.
people in
It was a
this
secret to us,
neighborhood
but if you were
in
living
Germany,
in Cambodia, you would have known
next
about
to
it.
this like
So I
Nazi
think there is
chalet that was a black
fruitful,
site where Nazis were like doing
ground for research,
Dachau
looking into what
human
happened in Germany and seeing
experimentation. That all
what
these
can
neighbors
be
knew what
found
was
out
going on
about
and nobody
these,
said anything. They were
huge,
like, oh, it's cool,
hugely
like the German
destructive and
government's working with
devastating
the US government
projects
to like
that were essentially
Nazi shit
systematic
in Germany.
torture going on in
Like,
this
what are you
house and
talking
who knows
about?
how many others.
Just to confirm too, when you found the initial transcript with the chancellor or correspondence, was there a response from the U.S. government to the Germans?
No, the U.S. government would possibly have advised Adenauer not to pursue it, but I don't think Adenauer would have even needed to be told that. He would see it, he would understand his close partnership with the United States made it impossible for him to criticize anything the U.S. was doing. Don't forget, this was not so long after the end of the Second World War.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it was like a
no,
couple
there
years
was
after the end of
no
the Second World War.
effort by the United States ever to reveal anything about what happened in Germany. And in fact, one of the FOIA requests that I made that was never fulfilled, and one that I would urge you to pursue, is what was Sidney Gottlieb doing during 2 years in Germany? He went to Germany and went to live there as a case officer. I was never able to find out what did he do during 2 years in Germany. There were huge numbers of MKUltra experiments going on in Germany, including a number that were fatal.
Probably that, since he
That
was
would
in
be a
charge of
very interesting
MKUltra.
catch of documents to find.
We will definitely be following up. My next question would be for either Dr. Kinzer or Mr. O'Neill. Declassified CIA records have
I mean,
revealed that
truly, this is
officers
so
deployed overseas
stupid.
have used
They're like playing
USAID funding
Pokemon
as an
Go
official
with like
cover, or
dumb
USAID
documents
as an
that
official cover
actually
for
aren't
operational work that had
informative.
nothing to do with the mission of USAID, i.e. humanitarian aid, medical relief, etc. In some cases, CIA officers operated under USAID cover, engaged in lethal activity in
Here
places
we
such as
go.
Vietnam, running
Justifying
assassination
because
missions
USAID
during the war in
are
country
going
from
to kill millions
1965
and
to
millions of
1975.
children
And since
around the
MK Ultra
world.
seems to have found its origin in drug experiments
But you know
conducted
what?
on
It was
prisoners
involved in
overseas,
MKUltra
and
too, so
first by
good
the
thing it's
SS in
gone.
Nazi Germany and then by US intelligence in camps captured from the Germans, do you believe that USAID may have been used overseas to further influence or further the MK Ultra, for example, on prisoners of war? Since part of USAID's mission was to administer drugs to the poor and needy populations, would the organization have abused its mandate by poisoning foreign populations or creating disassociated states for
You've got to be
interrogation or
fucking kidding
torture?
me.
I can't speak directly to AID, but it's certainly true that during this period, after the Second World War, the United States was using publicly announced and official U.S. government agencies to carry out covert action. We
No
now know,
shit.
for example, that 5% of all of the money appropriated for the Marshall Plan was diverted for covert activities. A number of U.S. agencies were used as cover by covert operatives.
Right, because it was during the Cold War and there was a lot
That
of
AID could have been one of them sounds very likely to me.
And the
Again,
NIMH
this was 70
admitted
years
to
ago.
allowing itself to be used for covert funding of MKUltra experiments in the 1970s when the operation was disclosed.
And that was 50 years ago.
Thank you. I now recognize Representative Burchett for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you all for being here. I remembered when all the talk about MKUltra broke, and then they were talking about lawsuits, and there were lawsuits, and the CIA and the federal government said that this didn't exist, and then they came back and said, well, it does exist, and then, but we're not doing it anymore. I guess my question to y'all first is, which lie do we believe?
We're not doing it anymore. Swear to God. I mean, I actually don't think that they are doing it anymore.
Obviously,
Not
there
like
was an
that.
open bar before this thing started, so
Many of
thank
these
y'all.
guys actually
But,
listen to what
Dr.
Neuralink is
Kinzer?
doing, speaking of Elon Musk and USAID.
Hit your mic, brother. You're not on the mic.
Because if
It's old
anybody
CIA
mind
trick.
control shit, I would.
I
think
put
there's
myself in the
tech
place of one
companies
of
that
those
are
senior
trying to,
CIA
like, connect
officers,
people
and I'm
directly
thinking to
to an
myself like
LLM.
the ones back in the 1950s. Well, other people must be doing this. We'd be falling behind if we don't do it. And nobody's looking over our shoulders. And that, I think, is your job. So I think there is a definite air of urgency and total secrecy. If any current research is going on, and if it's conducted in any comparable level of secrecy to the original MKUltra, it's very deeply secret.
But
But it
one
seems
thing
I'm-
you said, though, it's going to be
Very
hard for
secret.
Congress to act when they're so dadgum compromised. Let's just be honest. I mean, y'all are in the business of twisting ears and telling us things that we've done. And that sways a lot of people up here. Somebody doesn't want
They're
to
really
wreck a
doing a
marriage
great
or
job of
their
twisting the
business
CIA
or
ears.
lose this glamorous job that we have. And so I suspect that has a lot of play into it. Sorry to interrupt you. I apologize.
All I
I'm
mean to
just
say
talking.
is that I think if there are such projects going on inside the US government, there might be a sense that we can do this without any hostile supervision.
What are the possibilities that
What they're
that
saying then,
what we've learned in MK Ultra now that it has
US
advanced so
government
much to
and this
algorithms
being
and
under
and the
President Biden
computer and
was
getting to
conducting these activities. You know, if they were
loners,
still going
that
on in the
some of
federal
these
government,
loners could, through this
hasn't
just
Trump
mass
gotten to the bottom of this during his
propagation of
term?
whatever you're doing,
Why hasn't he looked into this so
could
far?
cause someone to maybe take a shot at a president.
Manchurian candidate shit.
I know there's a lot of speculation
I'm
out
the
there
Manchurian
about
candidate
the
expert.
Butler shooting, and I guess even the Charlie Kirk shooting. I just hate to speculate because I don't know. I have no firsthand knowledge whether those guys were programmed through radio
So Charlie
waves
Kirk was
or through
assassinated
their
by an MK
computer
Ultra guy.
activity. So I would never hazard a guess, except to say what I've
I
already
would never
said,
hazard a
that
guess
they
except to
developed
say all
means
that
that
speculative
we've
shit
never
that I
been told
just
about
said.
many, many years ago, and I imagine
Wow.
they've evolved to be much more effective now. So
Let me
anything's
interrupt you one more
possible.
time, and I apologize again. But don't you think that they could cast this broad net through these algorithms and other things, and maybe they don't know the exact
Algorithms.
person it's going to affect, but they know what type of person it's going to affect, and they know it's going to happen, and that way they can't predict when it's going to happen, but they think it will happen, and then that way they can sort of wash their hands of this whole thing
And it's called machine
and say,
learning
well, we didn't have anything to
classification
do
of
with it,
social
but in
media.
effect they really did, because they put this out there and they continue to put it out there. Through whatever method you're talking about.
I love that he
Go
did
ahead,
not
guys.
follow
I'm
up
sorry.
on
Ma'am,
the
if you
MK
wanna jump
Ultra
in.
Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
Are you fucking kidding
Doctor,
me?
go ahead.
It sounds to me like you're describing something like the Martin Luther King assassination. The FBI didn't carry it out, but
Oh.
it created such a climate.
You mean
that
MK Ultra
denouncing
got
King
Martin
as the
Luther
most
King Jr.
dangerous
too?
man in America and putting out all this material about how he was helping communists, that they must have thought it's going to filter down. Somebody will take action, and then we can say we didn't have anything to do with it.
And James Earl Ray was a third-rate thief. He made an incredible shot, 1 foot on a commode, 1 foot in a bathtub, leaning out of a window, basically. And the next day, or that afternoon, all the shrubbery was cut in front of the flop house he was staying in. There's a lot on that
Good
one that will
Lord.
never be discussed. I have some friends that were there, so I
I
guess
have
I
some
could come
friends
on
that were there. This is
pretty
like a
close to
sitting US
firsthand knowledge.
congressperson
But
who is
yeah,
saying
I'm
that
sorry.
Martin Luther King Jr.
I'm
by the
probably
way,
going to get
got
audited
MK
when I walk
Ultra.
out of the room. I know it. So
And like the
thank you.
evidence for this is that the
Chair Lady, I
shrubbery
yield back my 4
trend
seconds.
outside
Thank
the
you,
flop house where
Rep.
the
Burchett. I would like to
assassin
now
was
recognize
staying.
Representative Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I would love to let you
Oh,
gentlemen just talk some here. But when we're bringing up operations like Naomi and MK Ultra, there's Operation Mockingbird that was going on at the same time as MK
Mockingbird.
Ultra. And
So
it
many
really
of these
ties
things.
into what Congressman Burchett was talking about with radio waves, where we have these like a Venn diagram of individual people and the military casting a broader net. So you have the radio waves, computer activity, the Operation Mockingbird, the programming that is taking place. So what do you see in relation to what was happening then and what we are seeing now that could be types of the same kind of programs and even using direct energy weapons or the like? Mr. O'Neill, you can begin.
I would just like to say one thing. There was an objective outlined in the early proposals for MK Ultra to do experimentation to see whether they could do mass conversion, convert entire populations.
Okay. Mass conversion is also not a thing. Mass formation psychosis is something that Robert Malone always talks about. This is bioweapons of MK Ultra stuff at population scale.
But how you could influence people's thoughts. And Mockingbird played into that, which if people don't know, that was where they had CIA assets or co-opted people in the media who would write basically propaganda and try to control the thoughts and beliefs of the population.
Much like the population is doing now.
Is it still going on today? I would be surprised.
Oh, it's still going on today because the government is the one distributing the propaganda now. It is the party that Lauren Boebert is part of.
Came out of that, trying to make people believe in something that wasn't there. Dr. Kinzer, do you have anything on this?
I would say only that in the modern age, maybe radio waves and drugs are not necessary to control people's minds. We have such a great advertising, propaganda, press, social media collaboration.
I agree with that.
Marginalized, and real debate is frustrated because people are not given access to full amounts of information. So that's a way of controlling the minds of populations. It doesn't even require sophisticated electronic or
In other words, release my FOIA records so that I can write my next book.
Dad, for our next 2 minutes here, do we haven't, maybe you have answers to questions we haven't asked.
I would just like to reiterate something that I said in response to your earlier
Yes, sir.
question, and that is that
Just giving the crazy people time to talk.
theories are so widespread in America. It has to do with the disassociation between what we say we are and do and what we really are and do. This has become more and more clear to more and more people. Therefore, they're suspicious of nefarious dealings by the US, and they're also suspicious of other things that aren't nefarious at all. But there's just this mentality that is created by the covert sphere. And that is what makes people realize that things that used to seem really far-fetched are not so far-fetched after all.
So
Yes, well, you know,
I'd argue with this by saying that it's not so much the covert sphere that is the problem. I do think that we probably overclassify things in the US, but I think also that some things do need to be classified. I think that generally having classified things is important. However, I would argue that it's not withholding information from people, it's lying to people that is causing the problem with trust these days.
answer to us, the branch of government that actually creates them and provides their funding. And then, of course, the American taxpayer, whose money is being stolen to fund all of their programs and agencies.
The American taxpayer whose money is being stolen, it's being stolen by this current administration, not anything else, not certainly our government agencies working on behalf of Americans.
People, and I appreciate you gentlemen for being here today. Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Representative Boebert. Representative Burleson, do you have any further questions? Okay, I now recognize Representative Burleson for 5 minutes.
Mr. O'Neill, going back to Charles Manson and the Helter Skelter incident, can you explain how in the world someone who is an illiterate musician that seemed to be not exactly the brightest person somehow became a cult leader and was able to, you know, inspire all of these individuals to do crazy things?
Unfortunately, I spent 20 years trying to find out how that happened. And what I was able to prove was that from the moment Manson was released from federal prison in 1967, he violated his parole, went to the Bay Area without permission, and was immediately put under the supervision of a federal parole officer who basically gave him leniency as he gathered his group of followers, gave them drugs, dominated them, turned them into more or less subservient robots who would do anything he said. All that happened under the watchful eye of a parole officer named Roger Smith, who was also doing drug research at the same clinic that Jolly West had set up his operation.
Okay, so I mean, this whole thing is so dumb. Like that, there's this whole big conspiracy going on that MK Ultra basically was just committing all these crimes like nonstop. It was really, really successful actually at mind control. When 20 years in, you know, Sidney Gottlieb, the guy who ran the program, said that it was a complete failure. So, I mean, Tom O'Neill, this journalist who is such an expert on it, that he's saying that literally MK Ultra like had hired Charles Manson as a consultant because he was so good at like being a cult leader and doing mind control. Like, this is just, it makes absolutely no sense. And there's no proof of any of this. That there's, this parole officer, and then there's this clinic, and then there's Charles Manson, and he's giving everybody LSD, and they're going out and murdering people because he's a serial killer and he's insane. And that somehow this is like the CIA saw this and they're like, let's hire that guy. Like, I think he's got some great ideas, and I think that we can totally work with him to like make this mind control thing happen. It turns out like mind control isn't actually a thing, but they're all talking about it like it is.
Individual Jolly West, who was working with this parole officer, you think the parole officer was making the connection so that the drugs were then flowing through?
Well, the parole officer was at the same time he was supervising Manson's parole, running a research project called the Amphetamine Research Project out of that clinic. And that was
Why is a parole officer running an amphetamines research clinic? I mean, I realize it was like the 1950s or the 1960s, but I mean, why is the parole officer doing like research with meth on humans? Like, and he's Charles Manson's parole officer? What are you talking about, dude?
I believe that he was he was manipulated and at the very least given freedom to do what he did while he was being observed.
And then the same individual, Jolly
Right.
West, ends up.
It's just such a great story. Like, let's just let Charles Manson start his mind controlled cult full of all these like murderous hippies. And let's watch him and take notes so that we can like reverse engineer how he did it. That's what this guy is saying.
A year after the letter that I quoted in my statement where he was describing what he wanted to do, a year later on July 3rd, 1954, a 3-year-old girl was abducted and found later in a gravel pit, murdered, and next to a car that had been abandoned. And the search party that found the little girl's body was approached by a man who was an airman at the base, and he asked them where he was and how he had gotten there. He was arrested for the murder and described by the military officers who had him in custody as being in a trance or dazed. He didn't have any drugs in his system. He didn't recognize his wife when she was brought to see him. And at his trial, where Jolly West was his advising psychiatrist who examined him,
Of course.
it emerged that he had actually been being treated at the hospital at Lackland in an experimental program to cure his chronic debilitating migraine headaches. And he was executed 4 years later.
And then years later, he ends up volunteering to handle the Jack Ruby.
West does, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Good Lord.
Bob, is it in your expert opinion that Jack Ruby and Manson were assets of the intelligence agencies specifically pertaining to MK Ultra? Were they MK Ultra victims?
Yeah, theoretically, Manson, I've never been able to prove absolutely. Jack Ruby, I believe, this is something else. The Warren Commission investigation, on the Warren Commission was Alan Dulles, the former CIA director, who authorized and ran MK Ultra until he was fired by President Kennedy. The liaison to the committee for the CIA, who handled the information coming from the CIA back and forth to the Warren Commission, was Richard Helms, who was a direct supervisor of Jolly West. They knew who West was. They knew that what West was capable of and what they had paid him to do and what he had reported to them that he could do, including inducing mental disorders in people. That was never disclosed to the commission as far as anyone knows. So I believe that West was put in there to keep Jack Ruby from telling his story.
Okay, but you don't have
Wow.
any proof for any
In
of that
closing,
today.
I just want to thank you all for being here today, and we will be following up, Dr. Kinzer, on your request to fully redact. I'll be following up personally with the director of the CIA, the MK Ultra files that we do have. Also, as I noted earlier, there will be more that will be declassified, specifically pertaining to newly found records that were located. in what we were discussing earlier. I did also want to just state that for the record, in regards to what statements were made earlier regarding the German government, we will also be following up on that. If there are indeed people that were victims of this that have been buried, we would like to know who those people are and who their families are as well,
Dig 'em
in
up.
order to correct the historical wrongdoings of this government. Without further ado, I would like to state
Historical
that all members
wrongdoings
have
of this
5 legislative
government.
days within to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses that will be then forwarded to them. If there are no further business without objection, the task force stands adjourned.
Whew. All right. Well, that was unhinged, and I'm really, really sorry that we missed like some of the best parts that I was like screaming in frustration because I could see them occurring while I was desperately trying to fix my audio. I really apologize for that, guys. Next time, I'm just going to go ahead and restart my computer fresh before doing one of these things, because I think that all of the hooking up, unhooking, all the stuff that I do with my computer all day just made the software unhappy. So I hope it was an MK Ultra mind control. I guess the CIA could have been getting into my computer. I know that I'm a high value target. And so I do try to keep my cybersecurity tight, but they got me again. But let me just go over a few of the highlights that happened here while this was occurring. And I think that probably one of the things that that people really should keep in mind when thinking about this hearing is that the point of the hearing is not actually to interrogate things that happened 70 years ago or things that happened 50 years ago, or to even hold anybody accountable for it. It's really to make sure that there is a pretext for doing all of the dismantling to the government that they're going to do. And they really covered all of the bases. They got into this MK Naomi, and that is like, this is some sort of advanced level MK Ultra conspiracy knowledge. MK Naomi, as one of the witnesses said, was a program that was a sort of joint collab effort between the US military and the CIA, in which they were trying to make mind control bioweapons. Now, this like made me scream internally the second that I heard it, because the former ASPR, the administrator for strategic preparedness and response, Bob Kadlec, put out a report last year with the Scowcroft Institute at Texas A&M University that basically said that the pandemic was a neurocognitive bioweapon that was made basically it started off as like maybe a vaccine, but it also is like a bioweapon to induce long COVID in everybody and disrupt like Western society. And so, this is still an idea. The idea of MK Naomi is still an idea, but that's where this gets really chilling. So, I mean, this whole hearing was about holding our own government accountable. So they get, these 2 expert witnesses in here, this guy, Tom O'Neill, who wrote this just absolutely unhinged book in which he, finds all of these connections. And I mean, this is classic conspiracy theory stuff. Like, you have your little photo here and your newspaper clipping here on your little conspiracy board, and you're drawing things a string between them, but you're not actually confirming that those connections are anything real. And that's really what guys like Tom O'Neill do best. They point to a lot of different facts that, when taken together and presented and framed in the right way, look like they could be nefarious. They look like they could mean that, yeah, Charles Manson was a CIA asset, unwittingly was allowed to commit all of the murders that the Manson family committed because the CIA wanted to learn from him how to do mind control. I mean, that is literally what they are arguing. They are arguing that the US was in the business of making bioweapons to do this mind control with at population scale. They're alleging that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated by somebody who got MK Ultra into assassinating him, and that there have been all these other deaths, including of a 3-year-old girl on a military base, from somebody who got MK Ultra. And so, they're making Manchurian candidates, they're making secret assassins, they're doing all this mind control stuff. And they are really not talking about the actual horrible stuff that happened with MK Ultra. I mean, they did a little bit. My colleague and friend Liz Genexi was there, getting all sorts of shit from Nancy Mace and from Lauren Boebert, two women who, I should add, are completely unqualified to even ask somebody like Dr. Genexi a serious question, and which they demonstrated clearly they don't have the capacity to do so, because Nancy Mace just started going in on her about how she doesn't have any expertise about MK Ultra. And you know what? I don't have any expertise about MK Ultra specifically either. I've looked into it just because I figured, like I said, that I had to, because MK Ultra is the same thing as lab leak. It is the same thing as anti-vax. It is the same thing as every single pandemic conspiracy theory, that we actually had lockdowns, that people died from vaccines, that people died from school closures, that people died because of pandemic and public health measures that were taken, or that Tony Fauci started the pandemic. So this is something that I'm really, really sad. And I'm going to get some clips to share with you tomorrow. And maybe I'll even be able to bring Liz on and we can chat about it together. But she started getting asked about, did Fauci tell her about how he started a lab leak? And did she have knowledge of Fauci starting the lab leak? And did she have knowledge of all this work that was being funded? Now, Liz Genexi was not a senior program official at NIAID, which is the IC that Tony Fauci ran when he was in charge of it for 50 years. NIAID is the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases. So that's, the virus department at NIH, and that's what Tony Fauci ran. Liz Genexi did not run that. She is she's a research psychologist by training. And she has administered, nearly $1 billion in federal programs over the years, or contributed to them. That has, as she said in her opening statement, resulted in some really, really tremendous breakthroughs. NIH has been a tremendous powerhouse for the American economy. It has allowed us to have all kinds of innovative new drugs. I think 354 out of 356 drugs that were approved between 2010 and 2019, Liz said in her opening statement, were all the direct result of NIH-funded research. So she was there to actually talk about what the government was really doing in terms of scientific research. Because again, MK Ultra ended in 1973. And while horrible things were done as part of MK Ultra, again, nobody is pro no informed consent, human experimentation on prisoners and children and people in the hospital. Like, nobody is for that. Nobody would take a position that would be for that, even if they were actually for that. So I find this whole thing to be very disingenuous, that the old guard more or less just loves to do this sort of unchecked human experimentation. And maybe, just maybe, this is still going on today. I don't know if anybody who was watching it separately from my janky ass audio noticed, but the question kept coming up. Do you think this is still going on? Do you think there's still MK Ultra stuff? And that resulted in probably my favorite moment from this hearing, which is when they suggested, Tom O'Neill suggested, that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by somebody who is the product of modern day MK Ultra. And the experts both, kind of talk about algorithms and things like that, as did some of the Congress people who were entirely Republicans. They came and basically wanted to air out all of their stupid ideas. The point of all of them, though, comes back to this. It comes back to trying to convince the American people that a bunch of things that didn't happen actually happened, and that the government, the old government, the government under President Joe Biden, was not working for Americans and was doing all of these horrible things. And it was tyranny, and it was, eroding our most basic freedoms and liberties, as we all saw during the pandemic, during those lockdowns that didn't actually happen. And all those vaccines that killed so many people. The reality is COVID killed a lot of people during the pandemic. Vaccines didn't kill people during the pandemic. COVID killed people during the pandemic. And that's the truth. what they keep doing is bringing these experts in for these hearings to spread information that they talk about as if it's true, and it's completely not. And you saw those experts today, Tom O'Neill, Dr. Kinzinger, say to everything. Dr. Kinzinger was much more careful, but they both said most of these things they had to answer that they don't know, because they don't. Most of the MK Ultra files, again, were destroyed. They were incinerated. They were burned in 1973, more than 50 years ago. So we are never going to find out a lot of these things. And you know what? If you want to go out on a little document hunt and try to find administrative records and metadata that would shed more light on this, by all means do it. I don't think anybody opposes compensating the survivors, anyways, of people who were wronged by the MK Ultra program. I mean, some of the stuff that they're talking about is pretty horrific, and some of it's true. So I do think that those efforts should happen, but not in this context. Why do we need to have a congressional hearing about this? The reason that the Republicans think we need to have a congressional hearing about this is because they want the appearance of something that's official, so that when they say these ridiculous lies over and over again, for example, Charlie Kirk got assassinated by a guy who was MK Ultra, people are going to say, well, Congress people are saying this in a congressional hearing. People are saying this under oath. So there must be some truth to it, right? They're experts. Congress has brought them in to provide expert testimony. And even though I know that those two guys are full of shit, and maybe they are documenting some of the historical things that happened with MK Ultra, but again, the documents largely don't exist. So while it's great to write books, and books, it's totally fine to be speculative and to have an opinion and to have a perspective and to have a belief, all totally fine. But don't come into Congress, into a task force on declassification, and insinuate that a program that ended more than 50 years ago is still going on today, and it's responsible for assassinations of political figures that have been incredibly politicized. I mean, this is not what you do when you're saying we want accountability for something that happened 53 years ago, or something that ended 53 years ago. We want accountability for that now, because we think, without showing any evidence whatsoever, that it's going on now in the US federal government. And I think that this is really, really scary. And like I said, this is the same thing as the lab leak. Next month, I think, whenever Rand Paul is able to start the show trials that he wants to have on the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are going to see this over and over again. Prior to this hearing, there was a hearing before the Senate that involved this guy before the HSGAC committee, the Homeland Security and Government Accountability Committee that Rand Paul is the chair of, where he brought in this guy, James Erdman III, who is a so-called CIA whistleblower. And you know what? He's blowing the whistle on all of their big issues. He blew the whistle on MK Ultra. He blew the whistle on Fauci lab leak stuff. He blew the whistle on foreign biolabs. He's just blowing the whistle on every single talking point that Tulsi Gabbard raised on her way out the door at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Now, in science, in HHS, we've seen the government use things like this, like CDC screwed up the pandemic, so let's gut it. NIH was, evil Fauci and the lab leak, so let's gut that. Let's not give out any of these grants. FDA is a total shit show, so let's turn that into a mechanism for extortion, and we'll try to get some drugs out. They just keep using all of these different things to justify the cuts that are happening. And ultimately, these are all lies that are being used to justify taking tax dollars away from services that Americans benefit from and redirecting them to the oligarchs that are trying to take control of our democracy. And so I really find these things to be really, really intolerable and full of liars. And the reason that I'm watching all of this stuff is because I agree that the government needs to be held accountable for the lies that it's told that have harmed Americans. And what's happening now in these hearings is exactly that. we are hearing our elected officials, instead of standing up for us and our democracy, they are talking about the wildest conspiracy theories that you can possibly imagine. They are trying to say that USAID, which provided vaccinations, which provided HIV medications, which provided cancer treatments to people all over the world. And we've been hearing in the last week about all the people who have died as a result of not having the foreign aid that USAID was providing. In my case, I know of multiple ways that the lack of USAID funding has impacted the Bundabuya Ebola virus response in the Democratic Republic of Congo. For example, one of the reasons this was detected so late was because cold chain infrastructure that had been funded by USAID had been dismantled. And so samples were not able to travel the long distance from Ituri province to Kinshasa for testing. So USAID, certainly people have died as a result of not having it. What they were suggesting today is that USAID has been used to basically continue secretly the MK Ultra program, doing unethical, without informed consent, experimentation on poor people around the world and calling it foreign aid. And there is absolutely no evidence of anything like that. And that is reprehensible to say, especially because it's being used to justify the fact that USAID was cut at all. And now people are trying to hold the government accountable for the fact that it's going to kill millions of kids. And they don't want to be held accountable for that. So they're going to redirect the blame. They're going to say that actually it was the old government. It was not the Trump government. Welcome to the golden age. Welcome to our tyranny. We hate Joe Biden's MK Ultra tyranny. We're going to put a stop to all of this bad but made up shit that was going on. So that's really what this hearing was about today. And I just think that it's really important for people to follow along with this and hold their feet to the fire. Somebody needs to be documenting this because one day, indeed, there will be the opportunity for accountability. And when that happens, when that day comes, I want to be able to point to when Nancy Mace told Liz Genexi that she wasn't an expert on anything and why is she even here if all she wants to talk about is the detrimental destruction that is being done to our government and not this MK Ultra conspiracy theory bullshit. So with that, I'm not doing a daily ranting show today because boy, have I been on here already for 2 hours straight and there were a lot of production issues and I'm feeling a bit peaked because I haven't really been having a great week health-wise. So I'm going to sign off right now, but I'm hoping that tomorrow Liz can come and join me and we can unpack a little bit more of what happened in this stupid fucking hearing. I'm also going to be talking to my friends at the Save America movement about writing up a Substack on this and providing some more information so that you guys can make sense of all this, because to a lot of people, I think watching, it's like, why are they doing all of this crazy stuff? Like, it just looks kind of crazy from the outside and clownish. And like, they're not really very competent, which is all true, by the way. But that's by design, because what is by design is the dismantling of our current form of government and replacement of that with essentially an authoritarian dictatorship. So I think that the Americans, the elected officials who have taken an oath to their constituents and to the Constitution and to our country, they need to do their job or we should hold them accountable. And so that's why I'm going to continue covering stupid ass hearings like this, because I do think that you should understand that the mechanism by which our government is being taken apart is incredibly stupid, but you do need to know about it. So with that, thanks very much for bearing with me through all of the production problems. And as always, I strive to improve constantly. Don't hold it against me. And I will get some clips, hopefully, that have better sound of anything that you guys missed. I was on a roll for part of it. So thanks so much, guys. If you don't already subscribe to me, all of my content's free. But if you subscribe, it would really help me a lot, just in terms of being able to get the word out further, being able to let you know whenever I have some new material out. And I'm really, really trying to produce as much as possible, as much as I'm able to, just because right now I think the most powerful weapons that we have to fight for our freedom and our democracy is words, is sharing information that's reliable, information that people can actually trust and use. And so I'm going to continue doing that. I really appreciate all of you who have joined me and who stuck with me. Yeah, thanks so much. See you next time. See you tomorrow at 1 p.m. I will be back for my usual ranting show. Hopefully Liz will be there too. Take care, everybody.